We're live.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular meeting of council for Monday, August the 29th. Call the meeting to order at 6:31. And as we always do, ask that you please stand if you're able for the playing of our national anthem.
We're live.
All right, good evening. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. And it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous people with this land, its waterways and resources. And we encourage residents to review the call to action information by visiting the website that is posted on the screen to conduct further research and educate oneself. Just a reminder that members have an obligation to declare any pecuniary interest in those obligations, or that duty rather, or it must be done both verbally and in writing. On to the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our January 25th council meeting? July. There you go. Buffett. Moved by Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Bonato. Making sure everybody was on their toes. Any discussion from those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And it's carried. All right. Were there any questions submitted, Jennifer, for tonight?
No, sir, not for this evening.
Okay. All right. So we do have one presentation. So we're joined this evening by Audit Dunlop on behalf of the Shepherd's Cupboard Food Bank. And Audit's presentation was in the agenda package, but I think she's going to take a few minutes and walk us through it, and then we can hopefully have a discussion afterwards. So Audit, over to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Mills, and hello, Council. With me tonight is Anthony Gagliardi, who is our treasurer of the Shepherd's Cupboard Food Bank.
Anthony.
I guess this all began with an email that I did send to the town back in, I think the beginning of June, requesting some assistance with taking a look at where the Shepherd's Cupboard is going and where we'll be in 5 years, and some of the questions we had as we began to outgrow the space we have down at the Mel Lloyd Center. I'm not sure which part you'd like me to review, whether it's the slides or the application for financial support.
It's kind of up to you. I mean, it's your time, whatever you want to sort of highlight for us? I think probably a general overview of
Okay,
the
well then
pressure.
I'll start with the part that we attached to our application for financial support. The Shepherd Cupboard Food Bank started in 1990 by the Shelburne, it was started by the Shelburne Ministerial, so a group project by everyone, the ministers that were in the area. It began in the old post office, which was the antique shop just there up at Owen Sound Street and Main Street there. And it's currently in its 4th location at the Mel Lloyd Center since 2003. We are responsible to a board of directors. The chair is currently Reverend Valerie Vanderwell from the Trinity United Church. We are totally volunteer run, so we have no paid employees. And currently we have about 54 volunteers, and this allows 100% of the donations to be used on the client. If you turn to your page about the stats, you'll see that we have really grown in the last couple of years. Currently, we are serving nearly 300 families that have used the food bank in the last year, and that incorporates over 700 individuals in those families. And a family can be one person, and it goes all the way up to 9 people. 21% are seniors, 38% are children, which is above the national average. 61% are from Shelburne, 25% are from Langton, 11% are from Amaranth, and 3% are from Mono-Momer. So overall, that represents about 7.8% of the population of Shelburne uses the food bank. Programs operated by the food bank daily, we have emergency response to calls needing food. Weekly, we're open twice weekly. And although the times say on Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30, we're actually at the food bank from 8:30, and sometimes we go until we're finished, which is 2 p.m. Thursdays, we start at 6 and we go till 7:30 p.m. But again, depending on the number of clients that come, we could go as late as 9 or later. Monthly, the second Tuesday of the month, we have 3 sets of deliveries that go out, and the 4th Thursday of the month, we provide a seniors market along with Rotary to the 4 county operated buildings. And yearly, along with Rotary, we provide the backpack program in August, which right now is running, and we have over 120 backpacks assigned to families of the food bank. And we provide Christmas hampers along with Rotary in December. I don't know if any of you have been down to visit the food bank or whether you've seen where we're located, but there are definitely limitations of the current location. One is lack of space. We were given free range space when COVID was going on. None of the programs were operating, so we basically had every room in the downstairs was allocated to the Shepherd's Cupboard, and we made use of them. However, with the reopening of the early years, we have been cut in half the space we were using before, which has left us with little room to store food or to bring food in greater supplies. It has also left us without an interviewing room for inside interviewing or a space for clients to be in. So right now, all that has been taken over by hampers and storage. We have stairs that we have to carry these hampers up and down, and due to county insurance and space restrictions, clients could never choose their own food on a point system like they do in Orangeville and in other food banks. Due to lack of space as well, we can't increase the number of deliveries because we have no space to put the deliveries. So before they go out with the 3 sets of drivers that we have. And this is something that we've just begun. We never used to deliver. This is something that happened as a result of COVID. And at the time, the county was doing the deliveries for us. Then they had to go back to their current jobs, and we were left with people who had counted on these deliveries who had no other way of getting access to the food. So we did come up with a system where we could continue that service. And And then we come to questions we'd like that we put forth for you to consider. The first one was we were interested exactly in hearing what is the town's poverty reduction strategy. My understanding is that all current levels of government, or the 3 current levels of government, do have to have a poverty reduction strategy, and yet I don't think we're aware of it. So I was wondering if that was something that we could talk about tonight, because we certainly want to know how the food bank fits into that. We also want to know how town businesses can, do they fit into that and through the food bank as well? Because we're a bit concerned that even after 32 years in operation, we still run across businesses and people who have no idea that Shelburne has its food bank. And it's a little disconcerting to hear that they continue to support Orangeville Food Bank rather than the one that's most local to them, serving their neighbors, because they didn't have any idea that we existed. We also wanted to see if the town could come or join with us about possible other locations for the food bank. And I guess we're looking at a 5-year plan here, but we were hoping on some respects that maybe the old LCBO would be a possibility. Hence my original memo was to inquire whether we could do join with the town in looking at that. However, I'm not sure that's even still available, but if that's not available, where are we going to go? There's no longer a Shelburne Ministerial. So again, that was the general loose umbrella that we fit under. And now we're wondering, where does the food bank fit in? And we're a group of volunteers that are providing a real mission to the townspeople, but where do we fit in? And client accessibility, again, there's difficulty people are having accessing the food bank, and this is difficult from different areas in town, the further ones out. We've had older people come in and have no ability to get their food home. And some have come during the hot weather and have almost collapsed on the doorstep when they've gotten there because they've had to walk so far. So we're wondering, how can we increase client accessibility to it? So, and where else did we go? Oh, and then we went into a part about asking, does the municipality consider us an essential service to the community members it serves? And we're wondering how we can fit into this election too, with as people are going out talking to the constituents, how often are they bringing up food insecurity? In looking at the national stats, like they're saying that, there's a huge insecurity and that they're calling it an economic storm that we're in because of the high housing costs, the high cost of food, and food insecurity, and the high cost of rentals. And we're wondering we're just getting new clients each and every week. And there's so many that come and they have such a story to tell. They're making $2,600 a month, and yet they're paying $2,550 in rent. Like there's no chance that they can't use are able to continue on without the use of the food bank. And yet with the rising cost of food, we're concerned too, because I think when I ran into you, Wade, at the grocery store, it was during a month that the food bank had paid $20,000 in its bills for food alone in order to be able to the demands that month. And we can't afford to pay $20,000 a month to stock the shelves so that we can continue to operate as we are. So we're here looking for some partnership and looking at future direction of the food bank, as well as applying for continued financial support. That's sort of a summary. Would you say, Anthony?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add to this is that with the application that we have currently for, we're asking for 20,000 in this scenario, just to echo some of the thoughts of what Ardith was saying, our percentages are daunting, but I think that everybody here on this council, I don't have to tell anybody about the growth of Shelburne alongside with that. And those percentages grow. And as those numbers grow with the percentages, we've seen an increase in what's needed. And we're worried, quite frankly, about what that looks like in the future. Inflation, when we talk about the business side of things and the way that inflation has continued to grow. And we talk about, incorporating deliveries with the gas prices on where they're at and food prices and where they continue to grow. We're just hoping that, that as we have your ear, we can demonstrate that, with our grant process, it was great. You guys were very generous in the Food for Thought grant and allotted us $3,000 for that. And that went a long way to helping our community. But we still have a long way to go. And we know that without your help, it's going to be very difficult. And so that's why we're hoping we can find some sort of partnership, as Audit was saying. And we know, there are limits to what council can do, but we also know that maybe we're not, we haven't totally, expressed how much we could use some help, right? And maybe we haven't investigated all avenues possible to see where we are. And I can speak as one of the business, a part of the business community that's out there. I do agree that the business community does need to step up. And I'll be, part of that presence as well. But as far as looking through the municipality, we're hoping that we can count on all of you as well.
All right. Well, thank you both for the presentation. I mean, that's really what I was kind of hoping for was, for you to be able to share kind of a sense of what you're seeing on the ground so that we can, open this dialogue and hopefully find some solutions. And obviously, thank you for the work you do. I mean, Audit, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been around since day one, right?
Well, not day one, but
okay.
I think I'm on my 29th year.
Okay, so pretty close.
Yeah, almost day one, close.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen the need increase exponentially, over the course of those 29 years as the community's grown. The one thing that I'm not going to say I was surprised, but I was interested in seeing the actual breakdown of numbers in terms of residents. So 61% of food bank clients come from the town of Shelburne proper. The other 39 are sort of made up from the surrounding rural municipalities. Just out of curiosity, I know that you received some grant funding through the county programs. Do you get any direct grant funding from any of those other municipalities at this point?
No, now we have, is Jan Horner, Momer or Mono? I always mix it up.
Momer.
Okay, so we did get a $500 grant from Momer then during the pandemic. We do get a $3,000 Food for Thought from Dufferin County, but Dufferin County, we can't apply for anything else because Dufferin County has always considered the lease of the space to be equal to the grant. And it is. I mean, we don't pay for the space. And to be fair to the county of Dufferin, we are only entitled to one room. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think.
And the hallway.
And the hallway, that's right. So to be fair to them, they've been very good. But I mean, being out in the rain, in the dark, in the snow, and trying to take, pertinent information from clients who are upset, who are suffering that food insecurity, who are unemployed and that, it doesn't make for a great beginning when we don't really have a long time to talk to them. And we're in less than austere surroundings, being outside, trying to write in the rain and the snow and that. And I think that Mel Lloyd Center has really been feeling a bit of the pinch of having us down there and using up so much of the space. So we're really wondering, what do the next 5 years, hold for us? And can we meet the need in Shelburne? It continues to rise. We have new people every shift coming. And we wonder, can we meet this need?
Yeah. Now, Audit, I remember through COVID, I mean, you and I spoke quite a few times through that, especially through that early phase of COVID when things were, really uncertain. And I know that there was some initial discussion, at least at that point, about perhaps trying to coordinate efforts at a county level Did that ever go anywhere kind of, post-COVID, or what was the end result of those discussions?
It didn't. I think that what happened was it came on us all so quickly. Orangeville wanted us to make a decision within 24 hours, and they wanted to take over our bank account, move us, change the way we were operating. And one thing that we all felt was, in a time of crisis, it was best to stay put, where people knew where you were, maintain calm, and continue to give out as we had, because we had the blessing at that time of Mel Lloyd Center to continue serving from that area. And in fact, with our increased space down there, it worked really, really well for a long time. So no, we haven't had that. I guess it's a bit of a different of a philosophy of ideas between Orangeville and us. They have 9 paid employees. We've always been kind of happy that 100% of the givings go to the client, and that we don't have anybody who's paid, and that it's all on a volunteer basis. And that way, when the community, many in the community like that idea. They're not paying for administrative costs. They're paying for their, food to go out to the clients. And so, we've had, sometimes that's helped us with our grants and seeking our grants. So no, we haven't had any further discussion, but I did watch the presentation by Orangeville Food Bank to the county, and it didn't sound like they were in any different position than we were. Outside of, they have a stellar building, 3 paid for vehicles, and paid staff. So aside from that, they sounded like they were, requesting much the same. So I'm not sure.
I had an opportunity to tour that facility a couple of weeks ago. They sort of did their official grand opening.
Right.
They've been there for a while, but the opening was put off because of COVID. So I was down there through the county work, and yeah, I mean, what they have there is enviable.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I mean, it's a great space. It allows them to do all sorts of things that you guys just can't, because you don't have the same space allocation. But I throw that out because, I mean, at this point, I mean, I hope at least nobody's come tonight thinking we're going to solve all the food security problems in the town of Shelburne. But
really?
I don't know how much time you have. Yeah, we can give it an honest effort. But
a very wise man, Wade, once said, "Neighbor is not a geographic term; it's a moral concept."
That is a very good. That is a very good quote. Yeah. But I do think that, as part of this discussion, I think we have to be willing to kind of look at all options, and that's one of them that comes to mind is some sort of coordinated county effort. And the reason my mind kind of went there initially was, when it comes to social service related issues within Dufferin County, that's traditionally how that has operated. Because we have the 2 tiers of municipal government, those social related programs tend to be put to the county because of resources and everything else. And to answer that one question you had in terms of our poverty reduction strategy, we sort of piggyback on the county, as does every other lower tier municipality. So I'm just wondering if there are some synergies there, or if there are opportunities that can be leveraged that sort of breaks down the barriers within Dufferin County when it comes to the food security issue.
Well, it does and it doesn't, because I think they would still be faced with having to look for a spot that is bigger than the spot that we have. Like, I think some of the core issues that we're looking at would face them as well. Like, they'd still be faced with finding where's a spot that, people who are coming from up north and people who are walking in can make it to in Shelburne. And it has to have a spot for all sorts of freezers, and it has to have a spot for, refrigeration and all that. So at the core of it, we'd be left with much, the similar thing. Like, we can borrow food when we are totally out, or we are in a low thing, and they have a surplus. Like, we can take food from Orangeville, and we have. Then they take our month's stats, and that goes to them for use in their thing. So it's not that we're not in a loose partnership. We are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think there's any question that the problems we're facing won't change, but I'm just wondering if we're able to pull back and look at it from sort of a higher altitude, maybe some more solutions will open up. And you know, one of the things, going back to the numbers, you know, 61% of the clients are coming from Shelburne. You know, that other 39% is made up of 4 other municipalities. Well, if the 5 of us are working together on solutions as opposed to just Shelburne, you know, I think the number of solutions or the opportunities, at least for positive solutions, should increase.
And Wade, sorry, not to interrupt, if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems like there may be an opportunity for maybe more extensive funding looking through a county as that tier within municipality than what's available through your tier.
Yeah, and to put it bluntly, I think that's one of the reasons why the county tends to look after those social service programs, because they are so cost prohibitive for smaller individual lower tier municipalities. But the county, obviously, because it pools of resources from all lower tiers, you know, tends to have a wider reach. And even if it's not a county-wide solution, you know, at the very least, I think it maybe should be a Northern Dufferin solution. You know, we're working with our other municipal partners on this. You know, yes, Shelburne is the hub, but you know, Amaranth, Melanchthon, Momer, they all have a stake in this.
Yeah. And they all need to step up as well. Agreed.
Well, step up, you know, whether it's financial or otherwise, but I think at the very least, they need to be at the table, and we need to be working together to find solutions.
All help is welcome, for sure. And you know, when in a scenario where we're all pushing towards the same direction rather than apart, I think it's, as you mentioned, much more likely to find a result.
Yeah. See, at this point, we couldn't join with Orangeville at this point because Orangeville is a licensed facility. So with that comes the weighing in and out of food, and so you need to have that ability to weigh that in and weigh that out, which we don't have that capability right now. So, I mean, part of that, if we ever were to go with Orangeville, is we need a much bigger facility. We need much more things because they fall under stricter guidelines than we do. We can take a far larger, broader produce from local farms and eggs and meat and all sorts of things that they're not allowed to do as a licensed facility.
I mean, I certainly don't want to monopolize all the time here, and we'll take as much time as we need, but I just have one further question. Beyond sort of the county funding and the funding you get through the Shelburne Community Grant funding, I know you get a lot of private donations from individuals and businesses, and that's great. Do you have any other sort of major sponsors that you kind of rely on from year to year?
Well, we do Compass Run for Food gives us a chunk of that. So a chunk of our money comes from Compass Run for Food. We have a few in the Momer area. There's a lady who really likes the food bank. She sponsors our $15 Giant Tiger cards that go out to all our seniors. She sponsored that at Christmas for a year. Which is good. But it's really the daily, weekly givings of the generous community of Shelburne that takes it in. And I agree with the Northern Dufferin scenario, because I mean, all food fundraisers, most of them are run here in the town of Shelburne. So I mean, it's usually, and we try to make sure that people aren't doing them back to back, but it's always the town of Shelburne that is, you know, being tapped to give the food at the door, etc., you know, to the high school, to the littles, to, you know, the hockey team that wants to do it, etc. It's not being run in the Northern Dufferin communities. You're right.
Yeah, and I mean, but by no means am I discounting what the other areas offer, because I see the names you list, you know, on social media, and you know, there are lots of names that come from municipalities, but you know, those are all private individuals, you know, giving what they can give. But
right,
there just seems to me to be an opportunity that I think we're perhaps missing, in terms
Great.
of a more collaborative partnership with those other municipalities. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's certainly something I'd be happy to kind of look at doing
Yeah.
quickly after the election when we know who all the players are going to be. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, early on in the new year, I think that's something that we should take a real hard look at.
Excellent.
Right. I would imagine that being centrally located in Shelburne will still be critical to.
I would think so. I think it makes sense for a number of reasons to kind of keep the physical location in Shelburne, but you know, I think there's a lot of other ways that the
Yeah.
other partners can contribute. Yeah.
Where would you think we'd be located, Wade? We've
I
already.
don't know offhand. I do think the one suggestion you made is off the table from what I hear. I mean, it's just sort of coffee shop talk, but
Of course.
I mean that it was also cost prohibitive.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah. Any other thoughts, Deputy Mayor?
Thanks. First of all, Audit and Anthony, great presentation. And I think a part of this is awareness. You talked about crisis, and I almost feel it's a quiet crisis because it's not like I hear a lot of people coming up and saying, hey, listen, I mean, I wish I had more help when it comes to food. A lot of people almost suffer in silence. And if you have these established relationships with folks,
Absolutely.
that's how you know. So I think, you know, as we talk about relying on the good generosity of folks, I think an awareness campaign about the food bank that the town could partner it with to say, hey, listen, here's what we have, here's the stats, and we really welcome all hands on deck. And that's really the approach that's going to help to resolve this issue, because governments, as you know, are increasingly dealing with decreasing budgets. And so it becomes very difficult. But that being said, that doesn't mean the advocacy is over. I can see a situation where maybe we have to increase our community grant funding to factor in, you know, as you put it, deeming this an essential service. Because in many ways, I agree with you, especially with the growing population that we have. So I like the idea of businesses coming on board. And I know with Anthony, when he says the business community is going to do stuff, he's going to do stuff. And so you could count on his word. And I know that I do. So I think that certainly with other municipalities, as the mayor pointed out, and I think also developers, you know, they come and they build a lot in their town, and not to say that we could force them, but certainly we could strongly encourage them as a part of them investing back into the community, that the food bank is at the top of that pecking order list at things that they can contribute to. Because we all know, and I've been a part of this, to be quite honest with you, where we help to get developers connected with certain organizations to make donations. And I think that when we're talking about a short list, because it's usually a short list, the food bank should be at the top, or certainly very near the top. So I think those are certain ways that we could really get things out there and get it top of mind, and so that it doesn't remain a quiet crisis, and that the funding is sustainable for years to come. And so those are just my comments, but I just wanted to thank both of you for your continued advocacy.
Appreciate that very much, Steve.
Yes, that's great, because there is, I don't think people realize that there's homelessness in Shelburne, that we're feeding people who are living on the street, who are living in their car, who have been kicked out, who are couch surfing, who are, you know, living, you know, over their paycheck, and their paycheck is going to a housing rental. Like, I don't know if everybody understands that, but we certainly do. We hear all those stories down at the food bank.
Bernardo.
I'm unmuted. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on the issue of where are you going to be housed? Where's the food going to be? It's great if we put all of it out there, people know about it, but if you've got nowhere to be and nowhere where people can get to you, then you sort of have to feed it yourself. And speaking about developers, I think we need to have a discussion with some of the developers that come in, because there is really many places around in town where you can house something half decent for a food bank. That's going to be growing as time goes on with the people in need. So my idea would be that as these developers come in town, I was wondering if there could be a building or something put aside in the town that a food bank could be a part of. And the be situated with the idea of a food bank, of the accessibility and use looked after. As far as vehicles for delivery, I think that should be also put out, maybe through the town and whatnot. We need drivers, we need vehicles, we need people that are able to take deliveries out for us to wherever they have to go. And that might help in that sense there. I mean, I don't mind. I've got a vehicle. I can soon put food in a vehicle and deliver it, but not knowing that that's required, I wouldn't do it. So knowing it and knowing what, when it needs to be done, and being able to volunteer to do that, that's something that needs to be broadcast out to people. We need drivers, we need vehicles, and we need you on these days to do the deliveries for us.
But in order to increase our deliveries at this point, we need space, because we build the hampers and we have them on flatbeds ready to go out, but we have no place to put our flatbeds. So that's where we're kind of limited to the 16 deliveries that we can do right now until we have a greater space. And that's part of the dilemma down at
I'd piggyback off that with a fantastic idea from Steve. And I think an awareness campaign, I mean, the word dignity came to mind when, you mentioned a quiet crisis. And I think it would be nothing but successful. But to echo what Mr. Bernardo has saying there is, with that success, where are we going to put that food? So if it is and will be as successful as many of the campaigns that you personally have spearheaded, so I know it will be successful. Where's it going to go? And that's our concern. And, it's all fantastic ideas, though. I just can't, I'm so impressed by you all. Great ideas. Great ideas.
But turning to the warden of Dufferin, where are you, warden?
I don't have that hat on at the moment.
I'm sure you wear many a hat, but that's the other thing, is we're always so afraid that we are one step away from them taking back those other rooms at the Mel Lloyd Center.
I don't think afraid, but aware. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
We know it's going to happen.
We're a little bit afraid, Anthony, because we're using rooms I'm sure they don't even know that we're using.
Right.
So we are conscious.
Don't let them hear first.
Yeah. And we've already been housed once in council chambers. So, and that was a hard housing in there.
Is there anybody else that wants to chime in at this point? Carrie, just a question, but because it's sort of an odd year in terms of budget timing, when are we going to be doing the grant funding evaluation process? Have we nailed down kind of a timeline for that yet?
We haven't firmly, but we are talking about having it at the December meeting, which will be the new council, the first meeting of the new council in December. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, initially I said the new year, but I mean, on second thought, the elections will be over as of the 24th. We'll know who the new players are then, even though they may not be formally installed. But I think immediately after that, we can start having those discussions. And at least in the case of Mono and Mulmer, both mayors there are acclaimed as well. So I think at this point, what I'm going to suggest is that I start having some of those conversations on somewhat of a casual basis, but in the spirit that, neighborliness is a moral concept. I'll talk to some of our neighbors and see if we can start to get our heads together. And then by the time we roll around to the grant funding discussions, maybe we'll have some more ideas to toss around at that point.
Fantastic.
Does that kind of work with you guys?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
And I mean, in the immediate interim, if there's an issue that comes up in terms of space requirements, let me know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to come in and forcibly remove.
No. My worry is that they
No, sure.
out.
Yeah.
Because those spaces are all for rent. So my worry is always that it will be rented out, before we can, and I don't know what we would do.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
If you have any ideas too on how Orangeville got 3 trucks from McMaster Ford, that would be, we'd love to go in on that. We are too, Wade, in council, just so that you know, Anthony, is it the Trillium grant that we're going to try for the first, this is our first year?
It is
trying
the Trillium grant, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're looking with that at possibly combining that with a move and maybe the first paid person to be put on. I mean, Shelburne's continuing to grow. Like, we put in a lot of volunteer hours there, and we're looking at that. Maybe it might be time that we need to bring in a part-time person to take over some of the ongoing responsibilities.
Yeah, and I mean, to your earlier comment about, you know, people perhaps feeling more comfortable donating when they know it's run by volunteers. I understand that to a point, but I also think people understand that, you know, this isn't 1997 anymore. You know, the town has grown a lot, the needs have changed. And, you know, that's an awful burden to put on a group of volunteers exclusively. So I mean, I think you'd probably find that most people would see the value in having somebody there dedicated that, you know, is really kind of, you know, doing this as a full-time or part-time kind of venture. So yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else? No. Well, thanks again for the presentation and the discussion. And if you're okay, Ardith and Anthony, I'll sort of keep the lines of communication open over the next couple of months as I have some of those discussions. And if any other ideas crop up, you know how to find me. So
yeah, we'd love to host everybody down at the food bank. If ever there's a chance that you'd love to do a little walk down, we'd love to show you what we do.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. All right. Well, then at this stage, can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? It's carried. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, I know that was a little longer than we normally give for presentations, but I think it was a worthwhile discussion. So thanks for everybody's indulgence. Council inquiries. Suspect there will be a few. Okay, hands are flying up everywhere. I have Councillor Buffett, Councillor Wagner, Deputy Mayor Anderson, and Councillor Donato. Must be election season. Councillor
Having
Buffett.
said that, I just like to take this opportunity to address my concerns once again publicly, in this case, as a member of council, to reflect on the feelings of the many business owners and local residents in the downtown area whose rights are being continuously disrupted by the impact of the bi-weekly Saturday protests. While all of us acknowledge the rights of individuals to protest, the charter does not give any one individual the right to constantly disrupt and negatively impact the rights of others working and living in the downtown area. And as you are aware, I shared my written concerns with the mayor and council colleagues back in early August, requesting then that we have an in-camera meeting to discuss our options and address the matter. And to date, unfortunately, this hasn't happened. So what I'm doing tonight is requesting of the CAO that we obtain outside legal advice so that both the CEO and staff can review and share the information with council. And since we have not to date communicated with the public, the town's official position on this matter is not stated. The public wants to know where we stand and what, if anything, to expect in the future. So I'm going to leave it with you, Denise, to discuss what you think we should do.
Okay, I can respond initially. I mean, first and foremost, this is potentially a law enforcement matter. And without getting into specifics, I know that our bylaw department has been dealing with the ongoing issue, as have Dufferin OPP. We have a police service board meeting tomorrow night, and I suspect that this will be one of the items for discussion. I've had a number of conversations, ongoing discussions with OPP. One of the things that they've indicated rather surprisingly is that the actual number of calls for service have been very low. So I know we're all sort of hearing things anecdotally. There's stuff on social media, but for whatever reason, that is not being reflected in actual calls. And I think our bylaw department has experienced a similar sort of experience. There just aren't many calls. The BIA as an organization, I think, was contacted on a couple of occasions to ask for comment. And to date, I don't think we've heard anything back.
Can I comment on that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, with a lot of the businesses that I've spoken to, they're afraid to voice their concerns because of the perceived repercussions. So that doesn't mean that they have no concerns. It just means they're afraid to speak.
Okay. Yeah. Are they afraid to call the police too? Is that something you're hearing?
Well, they're just afraid to deal with it. So they just would, hope that it goes away.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as far as the request for a meeting goes, I have no problem discussing that. Whether it's in camera or not, I guess depends on the nature of the discussion. If we're getting legal advice, then that is one of the qualifiers that would allow us to discuss it in camera. My inclination would be that we did have as much of the discussion as possible in open session. For a variety of reasons. I think it's only fair for the public to see what that discussion is.
Mm-hmm.
My personal position on it is absolutely, those who are demonstrating have certain rights that are guaranteed, but those rights are not unlimited. And there are certain laws, whether in the form of provincial, federal, or local bylaws that have to be adhered to. And again, not wanting to comment specifically on any enforcement action that has been taken. I do know that it's something that both the police and the bylaw are well aware of. What I will say is that oftentimes in situations like this where there isn't immediate threats to public safety, yes, there's sort of the nuisance factor, but when there aren't immediate threats to public safety, what we'll find is that often the enforcement mechanisms are not seen immediately. So it's not as though there's apprehensions or detentions taking place, but that's not to say that there is no enforcement. So.
And I comment on that as far as public safety going on, as far as the crosswalk goes, there are hundreds of cars backed up and the protesters keep pushing the buttons and kids are running around all over the place. And there's just a matter of time before someone gets hit by a car or something happens. So if that's not a public safety issue, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, what I would just simply say, I mean, I've heard all of what, and I'm sure all of us have received individual messages with respect to the ongoing protest, and I agree with the mayor in the sense that there has to be this balancing act. And I'm glad that he said what he said in the sense that there is a perception, and Councilor Buffett knows this, that it appears that maybe nothing is being done. And I think what the mayor has clarified this evening is there are steps that are being taken, but all of it may not be visible right away. But what I would say, just as a final element, Councilor Buffett, is I think it's important to, as the mayor pointed out, we have a police services board meeting tomorrow. And I would certainly invite you as to maybe attend as a delegate to speak directly to the chief. This is one avenue, but certainly as it deals with enforcement, I think having your voice and the collective voices of those who have spoken to you to present that to the board and get answers from the chief himself as to these issues and concerns that have been raised. And so I just leave that with you as an opportunity if you can.
I'll be happy to do that.
If you want, Councillor Buffett, we can get the meeting link sent over to you. I believe it's a 6:30 start tomorrow, but I'll send that to you tomorrow.
Okay, so I did want to direct that to the CEO, so I just wanted to have the CEO's comments.
Sure. Denise?
Sure, through the mayor. So with respect to process, and the mayor did indicate that legal advice, if you wished to have our solicitor provide counsel with an outline of potential tools within a legal portfolio available for your consideration, that would qualify as an in-camera. Outside of the legal advice, the discussion would be something that you would have at a standard regular meeting, and you would just have that discussion. So I'll wait for any direction. We would have to consult with our solicitor and then schedule that. Your last meeting is October 3rd of this year. So that limits us to October 12th, 26th, or 3rd.
I'm open.
So what I would suggest maybe then, again, process-wise, if Councillor Buffett brought a notice of motion.
I will bring that notice of motion if I can get a seconder.
I'm sure you will. Okay, so we'll do that at the notice of motion section. So maybe just jot down what you want to do. Sorry, but before I move on, Councillor Fegan, is this related to this matter? Okay, go ahead.
I'm just curious. I know that our bylaw and the OPP are actively involved every time that these protesters are out. Just out of curiosity, because Mayor and Deputy Mayor, I know that you guys are on the Police Services Board. Can you give us and the public kind of a notification on what actively are the OPP doing and how often are they there while the protesters are out? Maybe just to alleviate some of the public's questioning on what specifically is happening. Do you have any kind of information on what is actively happening, just so that people have an idea that there is something going on?
Yeah, so in terms of general terms, and again, I don't want to give kind of operational specifics, but in general terms, it's sort of been a multi-pronged approach to this point. And those efforts have included direct outreach with the demonstration organizer prior to the known planned dates. The purpose of those calls and points of contact, I think, have been to kind of clearly establish expectations in terms of what is or is not permissible. Day of the protest, what has sort of been the standard course is that there's some engagement with the demonstration organizer at the front end of the event. And then throughout the course of the event, it's more of sort of a standby monitoring situation. If there are direct concerns, the direction has been that, somebody call in if they're seeing something and there are no police there immediately. What hasn't been the case in most situations, although this has happened on a few of the weekends, the police are not sitting directly in front of the demonstration while it's occurring, but they are sort of monitoring it throughout the course of the 2 or 3 hours that it runs. Our bylaw officer has been working sort of hand in glove with the OPP through each of those efforts. And again, to emphasize the point, I can assure you that there are enforcement efforts being made, but those enforcement efforts aren't readily apparent perhaps to anybody just sort of watching from the sidelines. Councillor Wagner.
Yes, thank you so much. Just wondering how, or if you have an idea on how much it would cost for external legal advice, just because I'm sure that's going to be a question I get from someone. So I'd just like to, kind of have that knowledge in hand if it does come to my attention.
That's how long we're talking.
Any idea, Denise? I don't know what's the hourly rate?
400 plus, and it would depend on the scope of the amount of work that was undertaken.
Okay, so sorry, was 400, so like 400 an hour?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I saw Council Wagner's response to the fees that lawyers make. I was just thinking to myself, oh boy. Okay. Listen, the OPP certainly, and if I think if members of council feel that there should be other deployment tactics utilized and have some advice. I mean, again, the Police Services Board is an option. I think the OPP is always open to hearing ideas, and whether that's collectively or given to the mayor himself. And so when we have maybe a more fulsome discussion as to what the option should be or what tinkering should happen, that might be an opportunity to engage the mayor or engage the chief himself at some point with some ideas if there's a feeling that there's a gap. In my view, I think another thing that's important, picking up on Councillor Fegan's question about the public not being aware, or the public needs to know, and I just wonder if it would be appropriate to collectively or through the mayor himself put out a statement that would, and again, it would be obviously tempered based on not him commenting on operational, but maybe something to the fact that council is aware. I think that there are members of the public who believe that with the infractions that they perceive or real, that the town of Shelburne is inept or inactive or not, quite frankly, interested in the disturbances that some feel that they're encountering. And I think maybe some comment to say that, hey, we're aware, we hear you, and we are monitoring the situation may go a long way of easing some of the concerns that some have, and at the same time not penalizing those who have a right to protest, but certainly making people aware of the fact that we're paying attention to the situation. And so that might be something to consider. I think that might be one of the easiest steps potentially to help quell some of these concerns. Thank you.
And I certainly have no problem doing that, keeping in mind that it's not council's prerogative to enforce laws or bylaws. That this is, as I said at the outset, largely a law enforcement matter. I would want to be very careful in terms of not blurring those lines or certainly not crossing those lines. But in terms of a broad statement, as you say, to indicate, yes, obviously we're aware of this and, efforts are being taken. And then if other agencies want to make more specific comments in terms of their own efforts, that's up to them. But Councillor Bernardo.
You are the spokesman for council for the town, so you have to make a statement. We can't make a statement as a councillor. Sorry, can't hear me?
That seems a little better.
Really bad.
Okay, I'm not either close enough away. Anyway, what I was saying is the mayor is the spokesman, not council, so the mayor does have to do something for the public. We cannot be, we're not the spokespeople for, for the council. He is. The other thing I wanted to ask at the Police Services Board meeting is, if you have ideas or questions you want to ask, is it open enough for people to attend?
We have a public question period, just same as we do here. So yeah.
It is open. Okay. So for example, if I wanted to be there tomorrow night, where would I get the link?
What I'll do, I'll email the link to all of council. Yeah. And then if anybody wants to join on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, because I do have some ideas and I wouldn't mind, or questions, and I wouldn't mind going forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is that it for this inquiry? Okay. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I had a separate one outside of policing, if I may.
No, that's why I was asking if that was it for this inquiry. I've got a list going here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I interrupt.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. But
I'll wait my time in the queue. My apologies.
For Wagner up, and then you, and then Councillor Bernardo. Okay. Councillor Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mary Mills. I guess just on a different note, it's kind of an inquiry, I guess, but also an announcement. I wanted to congratulate the Shelburne Thunder under 10 and under 12 soccer team for their undefeated season this year. So that is an amazing accomplishment for the youth of our town here in Shelburne that play soccer, because it can't be easy to go undefeated. So wanted to congratulate them for sure for all their hard efforts and well played games. And just wondering if maybe we could, as town staff or as whatever, put something on our LCD screens just to sort of acknowledge that accomplishment. It doesn't have to be anything major, just something that says congratulations, U10, U12, Shelburne Thunder for their undefeated season, or something like that, right? If that could happen, that would be awesome. I think that the youth would love to potentially see that as they drive by or whatnot, and, give a little smile, give them a little encouragement to show them that we're behind them. And just wondering if maybe we could get a small, quick, sort of brief update for the community regarding Jack Dowling Park and the tennis courts, just so that they know, where we're sort of located within timeline of completion. And thank you so much.
Denise?
So for Jack Downing, right now we have revised the opening day till September 29th at 1 p.m. with the ribbon cutting. And then there'll be the Orange Shirt Day and Every Child Matters celebration, I should say, night of reflection to the DEI committee. Even if the pavilion is not in, that's what we're waiting for at the moment, is the installation. That event will go through without a pavilion. We would have had the tentative date for the ribbon cutting for the tennis courts on Wednesday. However, I think everybody saw the rain today in Shelburne. And because of that forecast, today and tomorrow, we have to push out the date for the painting of the lines. And the date for the tennis court ribbon cutting is right now, Friday, September the 9th at 1 o'clock. Once we get those schedules from the contracts firmed up, then the information will be shared with social media.
All right. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
My time in the queue has arrived. All right. I'll pick up on Councillor Wegner's, first of all, acknowledgement of this outstanding achievement. And Councillor Wegner, with your permission, maybe we could not only the LCD or LED signs, but maybe even a certificate presented by the mayor. I'm sure that we'd be happy to see him with a framed certificate on their accomplishments, and maybe so staff and the mayor and yourself could maybe work on that, because I'm sure they'd be happy to receive something physical as well. The other two items are related rather to our bylaw. And I know that our bylaw is under review to be updated, and I know a report from staff is going to come at some point. But I don't know if this is addressed or has been addressed. I know we've talked about it a while back, but a couple of concerns have been raised that are bylaw issues. And what I'm hoping is that I'll get a response to say, yes, in our updated bylaw that's under review, these are going to be considered. And so these two items are as such. One is the issue of drones. A number of residents are concerned about the amount of drones that are flying in residential neighborhoods, flying up to their windows. There was one resident that mentioned that she was in her bathroom, and whether this was a real estate agent or otherwise trying to use the drone to capture pictures. I know that Councilor Buffett, I know it wasn't you, but using drones to capture pictures of houses, there was a concern about privacy there. And so whether or not other municipalities have addressed this, but I'm hoping that our bylaw could potentially speak to that. And the second item under bylaw is the use, what appears to be the increasing use of Airbnbs in residential neighborhoods as well, and what that could bring to the community, depending on who's coming in, et cetera. So I'm hoping that the bylaw, as it's being reviewed and updated, could address these emerging issues so that there's peace and tranquility in our neighborhoods. And then the last comment I have for council inquiries is And Steve is not here, so I'm gonna probably park this, but I'll just put it out there anyways. There was a concern that was raised by a resident about the one plant sign as to whether that was in compliance, but I'll park that until when Steve is here. And I'm sure he could speak to that and address that. So, but the other two, if staff or a CEO could speak to that would be great. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Anderson. Drones are actually federally regulated. Drones are considered aircraft, which makes you a pilot. So staff will have to go from here, go through with further research on how to address that and what to do, next steps, if we can do anything at all. But we can definitely look through that and see what we can find out. And then as for Airbnbs, currently they're not defined in the zoning bylaw. So I believe Steve Weaver is also looking at how to define that and bring forward an updated zoning bylaw for council's consideration. I can check with Steve to see if that's forthcoming.
Sorry, Mayor Mills, I apologize. There was one quick one, and this was at Jack Downey Park. The question was, what type of accessibility seating? How many and what types of accessibility seating will be installed in Jack Downey Park? Thank you.
So the fully accessible seating is not yet installed. The benches that we have today are more accessible than we've had in the past in terms of the slope, but the ones that are coming, which are on order, have no backs. They're more modular so that somebody that's in a wheelchair can easily have a barrier-free use. That was part of the grant. And we're spending about $8,000 of the grant money that we received to support that. And they're just on order right now. And unfortunately, they will not be ready by the time the park ribbon cutting is done. And we'll certainly update when they're going to be done. But there's space in the park where they'll be added. And that is a really important feature of the park.
Just in terms of the Airbnb, I had a discussion when I was at AMO with some of the other mayors, and one of the mayors I met through the Western Wardens Caucus is Mayor Cornell from Tiny Township, and I see actually that they just recently have made some changes to their bylaw. I mean, it's a big vacation area, so I suspect, you know, if we're starting to see it here, that they're really dealing with it there. So, you know, I'm sure there's lots of material out there and resources we can tap into, but yeah. Denise?
I can also mention that given where I was before along Georgian Bay, there are a number of municipalities, including the town of Blue Mountain and the town of Collingwood, that have had to address this in the past. So we certainly as staff can learn from our colleague neighbors that have done probably some significant work in addressing that. Wasaga Beach is another one. They have, such an influx of, I guess, people visiting that homes are converted all the time. So they've been in this review for years. So we'll look at that as well as a benchmark.
Councilor Buffett?
Yeah, can I just add to that? I know that the town of Blue Mountain, because I was dealing with property in the area, they have designated areas in Blue Mountain for Airbnbs. So if you don't have that designation in the area that you have your home or property, you cannot operate an Airbnb. So that's something that we could look at.
Okay. All right, Councilor Bernardo. That's the end of my list, unless anybody else has more inquiries.
I have a few, so I'll keep us busy for a little bit. Okay, most of my inquiries are on County Road 11, and these are issues in regards to traffic, large trucks. I'm wondering if both the deputy mayor and the mayor can maybe bring this up at some county council meeting. Gate brakes. They come down there, they turn on their gate brakes, especially when they're coming to a stop at the lights as they're coming down County Road 11. We have houses on School Road, and residents there along as well as Main Street. Is there any chance of putting up signage saying no take breaks within the town? I know we can't say stop them or whatever, but at least put signs up telling them not to use them so that they're not waking people up even in maybe the middle of the night. The other issue is people are walking at 3 a.m. in the morning from KTH home. And all they've got is a trail that is not lighted within the park or the side of County Road 11 to walk on. And at 3 a.m. in the morning, you have a dark night, no moon, or it's winter. That's a pretty difficult situation. So I'm wondering if maybe we can at least investigate either lighting or a sidewalk on County Road 11 going down there so that these people at least if we can make it home. The last thing we want is for somebody to be killed because they're trying to get home from work. And finally, again, at the county level on County Road 11, I'm wondering for noise, if a living tree could not be put up from say 89, a living tree wall from 89 downwards to maybe the school property, that might also help eliminate noise, especially when they come to take breaks in the large trucks. So those are 3 for County Road 11. Now I'm going to move you to the opposite side of town. Victoria.
Just before we move on from that, the deputy mayor and I are both on the environmental and infrastructure, i.e. roads committee at county, so we can raise those points at the next meeting.
Great. I'm sure that the residents there will appreciate that. The other, I'm going to move to the opposite side of town on Victoria Street and Stella Jones. They have a large mound of dirt that when the wind, and we've had some pretty good winds from the west come through, all they get is sand, dirt coming down through Franklin, Simon Street, just blows right through onto their houses. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty frustrating. I'm just wondering, is there any reason why that can't be seeded if Stella Jones isn't currently using it or moving it around? There should be some way to control that. And I think if within our bylaws, if we had mounds of dirt and whatnot, that they need to be used or seeded until they're being used. So that way that dirt is not blowing all over the place. The other issue is the property south of the dirt mound, still on Victoria Street. It's full of thistles, tall grass, looks like crap. To be honest, I can't use any other word but crap, okay? And it's a visible, something that you see as you're going down Victoria Street, but worse than that, it's full of thistles and other stuff, weeds that are blowing right across the road and onto the residents, again, on Franklin and Simon. Can they at least cut it down, make it look half decent?
Jim?
Through your worship, we have been in contact with Stella Jones. It's been a while since our last development meeting with them. They were pushing towards getting their new shipping center built down in the south end there. So that will take care of the weed issue at that point. We have mentioned to them before, and we do routine site visits in there just about siltation. So we've had them put in proper siltation fencing and do dust control in there as well. So they did do a lot of calcium in there, which has cut dust down quite a bit. And I know it was an issue there when we were having some pretty unusual winds there for a while, but they are planning on using that material to rehab areas that they're working on. But I can touch base with them again and mention to Blake, who does the inspections for SBA, just to note that in his next report.
That mound, I was down Victoria Street on Sunday. That mound, if they did any dust control on it, I didn't see it because it looks like a heck of a mound in dirt. So please make sure, and I'm sure the residents there will also appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Okay.
That's it for me.
All right. Well, I'm at the end of my list. Any other inquiries? Okay. All right, moving on then to reports. The first report is from our CAO regarding building use by OPP. So Denise.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. So this is a brief and very short report and follow up to the request of council from June the 27th. You had asked us to review the utilization of town hall in particular to support some of the needs of the OPP, to have them have the access to a building to remain in town. As part of that process, and before we started a very comprehensive review of our space, particularly some of the challenges we knew we were going to be facing, we did know that the OPP were having the ability to access the fire hall. So as a preliminary discussion, we held a meeting with the OPP, with the fire representatives, the chief and myself, to go over the potential on the utilization of that space. So a number of amenities in the building were designated as being very helpful to the needs of the OPP. I've listed those there. They also were already, as I mentioned, using the building, or some officers were predominantly for washroom use. So as a result of that meeting, a tentative 1-year program was put in place, and I understand that it's going very well from recent feedback from not only the fire chief, but from the OPP. And the only restriction, even though they can work around it, is the training night of Thursday evenings for the fire department. But that doesn't prevent the access to the OPP. It just limits the scope of access. So for administration during the training. So that's really the update. They found a location that's working very well for them. It's very central to the town of Shelburne. I think it's less than a half a kilometer from town hall to the fire department. And the plan is to do a check-in at the 6 months and then do another check-in at 1 year to determine whether that arrangement is something that would continue. Based on the input to date, it looks like I said it's working very, very well. And all those that are involved appreciate the opportunity. And I think as well, both being in the EMS area of responsibilities, the networking that comes from that joint access is also very beneficial to them as colleagues. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Any questions for Denise? I can certainly echo that. I spoke to the fire chief on Friday, and he expressed how well it seems to be working from his perspective. And I've also had an opportunity to talk to a couple of officers who said it's a great solution. And yeah, we'll check in 6 months and make sure it's still working. If there are no questions, can I get a motion then to receive the report? Moved by Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Hull. All in favor? It's carried. All right, another report from our CAO regarding the Every Child Matters crosswalk.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee had followed up with the direction of council to look at a number of projects within their portfolio. We identify that the flag had been addressed a long time ago, so that's a non-issue, but specific to an Every Child Matters crosswalk. So there were 2 meetings where the opportunity was addressed. And originally we had looked at replicating the town of Orangeville's, which was about a $10,000 initiative. And they used a very high-end orange paint, which our budget is not accommodating, but we were lucky enough to find orange paint. So I've given you a quick overview of that initiative. The reason this is before council is to have your approval at the location. So on September 30th, the Orange Shirt Day and Every Child Matters reflection ceremony will be held. As we all know, it's a very important day to ensure that we recall and never forget the tragedies and atrocities that happened to the Indigenous communities through the residential school program. And included in that program event was the addition of an Every Child Matters crosswalk. And the location that we're recommending to you is that it would be at William and Main. And the reason for that is it would be in close proximity, or as close as we could ever get to the event. We will be having a flag raising of the Every Child Matters flag there. There will be, what we're expecting is a candlelight reflection walk. There will be a blessing. There'll be a number of other very, reflection. I guess we keep saying reflection because that's what it is. This is not a celebration or I wouldn't say a party, but it's not a happy time. It's a moment of somber reflection. So that road is a bit smaller, quite a bit smaller than Orangeville. So therefore the cost, as I mentioned, the orange paint that we're using is a lower quality, so it will not have the durability going forward. But I just wanted to basically anchor this budget so that people didn't think like, why did Orangeville's cost so much and ours is costing this? We did have one quote for this using the quality of paint that Orangeville had, and it was $15,000. I didn't write that, but just so you know that we're quite happy with this cost. The DEI budget in 2022 is $15,000. We still have to allocate some costs to their budget, but let's say that they've spent about 11,000 of that to date. They certainly have ample room to support the costs of this initiative as part of the September 30th Reflection Day. So I'm hoping I didn't provide too much detail on a decision of council being requested to approve a crosswalk location. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Donato.
Great. Thank you, Denise, for and the DEI committee for what they've done. But I guess my question is, I know we're using DEI money to do it, but for the fact that the paint is so durable means that down the road, probably next year, we're going to be redoing it again. At some point, does it make sense for us to put extra money in our budget to make the paint durable so that we're not consistently year after year painting that it'll last a little longer and in the end maybe cost us a little less by having it painted durable? It's just a thought.
So the only option to get the quality of paint that Orangeville had was a $15,000 quote.
So
There's no paint to be had. We exhausted finding this paint. We even called other municipalities that have crosswalks and nobody has this. It could be ordered, but it will take months because it's not in supply right now and it has to be specially ordered. So we may get 2 years out of this one. We're not sure, but it certainly is something that we could look at in the future with respect to more durability, but to allow this event to go forward with an orange crosswalk. The other thing that we could have done is inverted the Orangeville approach and use solid white, which is paint we have, as well as just orange feathers and orange stripes, which we did clear with the Dufferin Cultural Community Resource Circle to make sure that that was acceptable. But because we were able to locate orange paint, we thought that that would be a more respectful way to go. And again, it's a contract and we still have to do some of the painting and the feathers and the stripes ourselves. So it was simply a matter of timing. And we're happy that we're able to locate the paint. And we have included it in the tentative ceremony, but if it's not something as a location that council approves, we certainly can adjust and advise the DEI committee at their working meeting on September 1st, that this will not be a part of the ceremony.
I'll be honest, I have no issue with the location. I think it's a fantastic location for it to be in, and I would be happy to move the motion. It's just I was a little bit concerned about the paint, but the explanation that it's not available.
Deputy Mayor Anderson and then Councilor Keegan.
Yeah, thank you. This is not a question, but more of a comment, and this is really for the benefit of the community, and I dare say for the Indigenous community who may be watching this live or at a later date. There were several options that were considered by the DEI committee as to what would be appropriate to help celebrate this, no, not celebrate, but to reflect on this occasion, excuse me. What's important to note is, and sometimes in these instances, we could insert our own beliefs as to what is important and to mark the occasion. And I'm proud to say that the DEI committee didn't do that. And as our CEO mentioned, with the consultation of the Dufferin Cultural Resource Circle, we were put in contact with an Indigenous elder that these options were presented to, in particular that of the crosswalk. And it was the belief of the Indigenous elder, especially in light of what happened in Orangeville, that this option, this selection would be the most appropriate to reflect on this particular occasion. And so that the community understands this is the reason why that the crosswalk was selected versus other options that may have been considered at the time. And so thank you to Debbie. Thank you to the elder who will be a part of this walk, reflection walk, on, I think it's October the 30th, if I'm not mistaken, Denise, is when we're actually having.
Just to clarify, September 30th.
September 30th. September 30th. Thank you. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Fegan.
I think the deputy mayor pretty much articulated pretty much what I was going for anyway. So that's thank you very much, deputy mayor. You took my words right out of my mouth.
Denise, just for my own sake of clarity, so the crosswalk will actually be across William. We're not talking about the crosswalk across Main. Okay.
So we'll go from, it'll go parallel, like it's sort. Okay, so it's really, you tell me this way.
Yes.
Okay,
Parallel
not this
to
way.
Main Street.
Yeah, so it'll go into Jack Downing Park.
Okay.
And it'll be a high profile to, when we have the blessing, you'll be able to see the crosswalk and the flag at the same time. And then as we light up Orange, Town Hall in Orange, you will have that almost tri-impact of visual.
All right, Councillor Bernardo offered to make the motion. So the motion is to receive the report and to approve the location. Is there a seconder for that? Okay. So moved by Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. All right. Next is a report from our treasurer regarding our municipal audit services. Fairly straightforward report, I think. Carrie, you just need a bylaw to formalize it, but do you want to speak to it at all?
Thank you. And through the mayor, the town went out for RFP for audit services this year. The last time that we did that was 2010. So it's been quite some time. We've had several extensions to the contract. And we attempted to go out in 2020, but because of COVID and everything else that we were trying to manage, we asked council for a 2-year extension at that time. So we have issued the RFP to start with this year's audit for 2022. And the RFP closed August 4th. 2 submissions were received. And the prices include the cost for a review for the Centre Dufferin Recreation Complex, the Shelburne Public Library, as well as the Shelburne BIA. And both firms that submitted included a comprehensive and extensive list, and their experience and qualifications are equal. They are both fully capable of doing the town's audit. It essentially came down to the price. And as you can see, there was quite a significant difference. And so the motion from staff is recommending that we do switch to RLB for our 2022 to 2025 auditing services, with an extension opportunity for an extension of 1 year following that.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie? Okay. Look for a motion then to receive that report and to authorize the bylaw to enter into an agreement to appoint RLB as our municipal auditors for a 4-year term for the amount of $144,570, excluding HST, with a further option to renew for 1 year. Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. I'll just add to that the added benefit, in addition to cost, is that this firm is local as well. They do have an office in Shelburne, so that is sort of a nice added bonus as well, in addition to the cost. All in favor? It's carried. All right. Next is report from our Director of Development and Operations regarding our hot mix asphalt resurfacing. Jim?
Through your worship, Each year, the town utilizes our Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding, which is a formula-based funding for our annual repairs to our road network, our core infrastructure, in accordance with our town roads needs study, as well as our asset management plan and our 5-year capital budget. Appendix 1, which is attached, is from a breakdown from Esprinet and Associates, just detailing our RFP that went out for 2022. The RFP was sent out to 11 contractors. 2 contractors attended our non-mandatory meeting, and we did receive three bids from contractors. The RFP deadline was extended, just as fate would have it. Our RFP was due on the day that the Rogers network went down, so we did extend that just to allow for a better intake on the RFP. Staff and town engineers are recommending that the RFP be rewarded to the Murray Group. They have done work for the town before for the full scope of the project, which would be a net cost of $282,117.54 with our portion of the HST. This funding for our projects this year do come, as I mentioned, from the OCIF funding. We do have a line for back lane resurfacing, which we've been carrying the last few years, as well as an item for the Legion Corner, which is a project we've been trying to get done for a number of years. So we could not get contractors, so we tacked it onto our RFP. Following the adoption of the 2022 budget, we did get a nice surprise where we noticed that we'd be getting substantially a larger amount of money than we normally do for our OCIF funding. So we're not sure if this is going to continue in the future, but it was an increase of $328,265 from our usual amount. The Ministry of Infrastructure allows us to accumulate this for up to a 5-year period, which allows us to look at some larger projects that don't fall into our usual scope of what we were spending, around $260,000 per year. These expenditures must be done on core infrastructure such as roads, bridges, water, wastewater, and it would include sanitary and storm in there as well, as long as they're part of the asset management plan. Staff is recommending that the additional OCIF funding of $328,265 be placed in a reserve to offset these future projects to be identified in upcoming budgets. With our policy implications, this does meet with our municipal procurement policy. Consultations were with Esprinet and Associates, Dave Dagenet and Blake RM. And this does align with council's target number 3 for strategic priorities to invest in and fund critical infrastructure for the future. Thank you very much.
Okay. Questions for Jim? No? Okay. I have a motion then to receive that report and approve the recommendation to award the contract to the Murray Group in the amount of $277,238.15 plus HST, and to instruct staff to place the additional 2022 OCIF funding in the amount of $328,265 into a capital reserve to be utilized for a larger capital core infrastructure project, which will be identified over the next 5 years. Mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. All right. And the last item is a bylaw for consideration, and this is sort of our annual bylaw with Integrated Maintenance and Operations Systems, Inc. For winter maintenance in the connecting link. Denise or Jim, there's nothing unusual about this. This is the standard bylaw we pass every sort of fall, right?
Through your worship, yes. It's very standard. There's a very minimal increase. And it's just the same agreement, almost a carbon copy of what we signed in the past.
Okay. So just need a motion to authorize that bylaw by Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? That's carried. All right, notices of motion. Councillor Buffett.
Okay,
One
so my-
coming from you, and then we'll open it up to everybody else.
okay. So my notice of motion is that council obtain an outside legal opinion for consideration for the options for dealing with the ongoing protest downtown and present these findings in an in-camera meeting of council.
Sorry, Councillor Wagner, did I see your hand up? Oh, okay, sorry. All right, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bernardo, okay. All right. All right, Deputy Mayor Anderson, did you have a notice of motion as well?
I do, thank you. I think there's a saying that you become passionate about an issue when you felt the pain yourself. And so some of you may know what I'm talking about. If you've tried to make the left-hand turn into the commercial plaza off of 89, for those who are old enough to remember it, it feels like a game of Frogger as you're trying to dodge oncoming vehicles approaching in the opposite way. And so it's dangerous. Not only because people are impatient because they don't have to wait, they want to wait a full cycle for the light to turn green again before they're able to move. And so people are taking what I call chances to beat that oncoming traffic. And then secondly, it is causing a long backup of traffic in that left turning lane that actually goes back to the intersection of 89 and 124. And so the hope is, and this may very well already be in the works, but just to formalize it, I guess, so the notice of motion really is for staff to write to the MTO asking for a left turn signal to be installed. And I think that would alleviate some of the safety concerns that I've witnessed myself and others have brought to my attention. So the wording has already been provided to staff already in advance of this meeting. And so I'll leave it at that. And Councillor Bernardo has seconded that notice of motion as well. Thank you.
Your timing on this is good. I've had a brief exchange with Minister Jones on this as well, and some may remember when the left advanced screen was finally installed at 124 and 89. That did take some considerable influence on the part of our MPP to finally sort of get that over the finish line. And Minister Jones certainly said to, let her know what she can do to kind of help move that along. So that's good. Any other notices of motion for tonight? Okay, Councillor Bernardo, I know you have something you want to raise from correspondence, I believe. Okay. All right, if that's it for notices, then we'll move on to communications. Quite a long list of 20 items. So Councillor Bernardo, I'll go to you first because I know you have a few you've identified. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Item number 6, a motion prepared and supported to Darwin alert. Item number 7, the dissolution of the Ontario Land Tribunal, a motion for that. And Jennifer has, I don't want to read my rough writing. I'm hoping Jennifer can read them out for me. And item number 8, support of the North Dumfries must build right for Ontario. And I'll give the reasons for that as a motion as well. And I'll give the reasons for them, and then Jennifer could maybe read out the motions after. The Darwin alert, item number 6, that is to change the Amber alert currently and to change it so that it includes children that not only are abducted but are also missing. And a child has died because there was no alert going out for the missing child because it wasn't abducted. So I think that we should support the municipalities that have put out for a changing of the Amber to a better alert, and it's called a darker alert. Do we need a motion at this time, or?
I'm assuming your motion is just to support the.
Yeah, they're municipalities, yes.
Yep. Okay, that's fine. For a seconder for that then. Councillor Buffett. All right, any discussion on that one? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, the next one.
The dissolution of the Ontario Land Tribunal, my reasoning for that is that the Land Tribunal was put in place to change what was there before. I don't remember the name. Because at that point, municipalities were having issues with developers, and it was supposedly the Ontario Land Tribunal was supposed to be more in tune with what municipalities want. We know, we hear from our citizens what is required in a municipality, and then to turn around and have the Ontario Land Tribunal vote down what we ask, but as councils, what we ask them to do, the developers to do. I think that we don't need that. That's just another level of interference in municipal affairs. So I'm quite supportive of that. My motion is supportive of the other municipalities who requesting the dissolution of the Ontario Land Tribunal.
I could be wrong. I thought we had already passed a motion to that effect earlier. I mean, there's no harm in doing it again, but I was quite certain that we'd been circulated another motion at a previous meeting and already done that, but that's fine. Is there a seconder for this one? I mean, this one's directly supporting the County of Dufferin, so it's a little more local. Okay, so I have moved by Donato, seconded by Buffett. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Okay, and number 8.
Okay, number 8 is in support of North Dumfries' motion, which must build right the first time around, and the city of Cambridge. Just of this motion is that when we're putting up new housing, new buildings within our community, we must make sure that they're not contributing to more greenhouse gas effects. And the percentages are in the Cambridge motion as well as the North Dumfries motion of how much green gas is produced by bad bills, let's put it that way, there that contribute to it. So this is a motion basically saying, let's keep our planet safe for our children and our grandchildren when we do the buildings.
There's a second. The Wagner. All right. All in favor? It's carried. Okay.
I have one more, number 15, and this more of an inquiry. I didn't know that the grant was there, and I know the fire board has applied for it. We don't have a meeting until September, but I'm curious, is a municipality, I don't think the board can apply for it, but I'd like to investigate to find out if we can apply for the grant. We have our volunteer firefighters that are going up for education. There is a huge cost to them, both in gas, money, and time they're taking away from work to get there. So I'm just wondering if we can apply at least for the grant and help some of these firefighters out with nothing else, at least with their time. I'm not sure if it's a municipality that applies for it or if it's if the board can apply for it. So I'm hoping staff can find that out for me.
Do you know offhand, Denise?
So in the past, there's been grants that have to go to the municipality, namely the town of Shelburne. I think if Carrie's still on, there was a previous grant related to training. I think it was for $6,600. It was payable to the town of Shelburne. And then we distributed those funds back to the fire board.
Yeah, I saw in that letter that 750,000 put out. Is that where the 66,000 came out of that particular amount, or is
Sorry,
this
it was 6,600.
or 6,600? Which is
Yes, because I mean, I think we've mentioned before that the way that the governance model of the fire board is structured isn't something that's recognized through the granting structure. And it's the municipality that is the recipient of the grant or awarded funds based on an allocation formula. And in our case, that is the town of Shelburne. And then we in turn distribute those funds through a transfer back to the fire services and therefore the board.
okay. So I'm going to bring forward. I know tonight I can verbally bring it forward. South Bruce Peninsula has put forward a motion under number 15 asking for funding because of what I just mentioned compared to item number 16, which was what I was talking about on the fund, asking for funding because I'll put forward a motion supporting South Bruce, that's the case, asking for funding to pay for volunteer firefighters. Because number 16, the next one is if you read the correspondence, it says today on behalf of the Fire Marshal PFSC, I'm pleased to announce the creation of a $750,000 grant to support firefighter certification in Ontario. So it sounds to me like this is almost like a new grant, not a grant that we apply for. And the date that it's on that correspondence is the August 8th, 2022. So I'm just wondering if the municipality can look into that $750,000 grant, which will be better than $6,600 grant.
So we certainly can, and we'll again determine whether or not it's a mandatory allocation based on a formula as it was last time, or if it's specifically an application that the fire chief or colleagues would need to complete so that the town of Shelburne would remit on behalf of them being the eligible funding organization. So we'll follow up with the fire chief tomorrow.
Okay, that's all I was asking for. Appreciate that. That's the end of my question. Sorry to keep it so long.
Right. Anybody else for communications? Councillor Fegan?
This is more of a comment. I'd like to pull at number 1, if I could. We know that the Jack Downing Park revitalization, the cost to do so extended beyond what we were expecting. And I wanted to give credit where credit's due and thank KTH for stepping up for the generous donation in order to accommodate the extra funding that's needed for that park.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Can I have a motion then to receive the remaining items listed under communications? Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Carried. All right, kind of a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? It's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Donato, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Carried. All right, thank you all. See you soon.